our number one thing that we want to focus on this year is developing a 501(c)(3 that where we can sit here and point out to people all the warning signs, the symptoms that you would not think to look for to make you realize that you have the opportunity in your small town. And it doesn't involve having to shoot someone. It's just knowing the signs and being able to be aware and report what you see so that we can hopefully save the lives of women who right now are being exploited all across this country, even right now as you and I are speaking.
Welcome back to the program. My guest today has one of the most extraordinary stories that you actually just have to hear to believe. He is a highly decorated U.S. Army veteran as well as U.S. Marine veteran. He has also run for Congress in the past and is the co-founder of Preppers All Natural, which is a survival food company. He is here today to tell us an absolutely incredible story about faith, about survival, about rescue, and about self-defense that led to an extraordinary ending. Please welcome Jason Storm Chaser Nelson to the program. Jason, it is a pleasure to have you on the program today.
Thank you so much, Josh. It's a genuine pleasure to be here.
Good. So before we get into what happened in this incredible story that you're going to tell us, where did the name Storm Chaser come from for everybody?
You know, that came from very early on in my Marine Corps career. Actually, to make a long story short, I have made a habit of rushing into danger without really much care for my own personal safety. So I have made a habit of that. It stuck with me. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, depending on how you look at it, it's just tends to be how I live my life. So yeah,
Gotcha.
it's fitting.
Well, that kind of leads me into the next question, which is your bio says that you are 100% disabled. Without going into too much personal detail about yourself, what made you disabled? What type of events happened to you that put you in that permanent disabled status?
So there's a combination of events. I'm 100% combat disabled, but obviously you're probably aware after 19 and a half years of Marine Corps and Army Special Operations that it just takes a toll on your body, certain things that you might not be aware of, but over time in many missions and many foot patrols, they just tend to destroy you. And by the time I retired, the left side of my body essentially wasn't working. I was virtually on the edge of getting a hip replacement prior to what we're about to talk about. And then due to that, just 4 weeks ago, had my hip replaced, actually. So I'm starting on my way to becoming the $6 billion man.
The $6 billion man. There you go. So let's get into this because this is an absolute incredible, incredible story. So tell us exactly this full story from the very beginning until the incredible ending.
Sure, Josh. So, you know, my wife and I, we have 4 small children, 7 and under. We're at that, we're coming up to 10 years of marriage. And as you're aware, you rarely get a time out that you get to go spend with each other. And we had the opportunity, my brother had come into town and was willing to watch the children. And we took a date night, which for most adults means we found a small boutique hotel in the Indigo, had a restaurant and bar inside of it. And you know what that means? It means you get to go and have dinner together, go upstairs, take a nice hot bubble bath, and then sleep uninterrupted without children crawling all over you. So we moved forward and had our evening and had a great time and went to sleep. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, just woke up. Both of us sat up in bed to the sound of screams that sounded like they were coming from a small child or a woman. Screams of distress. And my wife looked right at me and said, "Do you hear those screams?" And by the time she finished her sentence, I was up. I went and grabbed my jeans. I left my cane there, but I just threw on a pair of jeans, made my way through the suite to the hallway door. And, you know, I was expecting to open it and see some sort of medical or fire emergency. That's what you think when you hear that kind of distress in a hotel. And when I opened my door, that's not what I saw. Instead, I saw glass all over the floor, and a woman was just outside my door screaming frantically into a phone that there was a man inside the room and he was going to kill those girls. And that was enough information for me. That's all I had. Turned around, went back into my room. I told my wife, call 911, get inside the bathtub, and I retrieved my 45 and went back out into the hallway. I stayed at the low ready, moved out, asked the woman any question I could. She wouldn't give me any sort of answers to what was going on other than a man was going to kill those women, even frantically telling me to shoot the door, which, as you're aware with firearms, that's just not how it works in the movies. It might work, but I did what I could. I assessed the situation. I could hear a man throwing furniture, crashing, girls screaming. So I backslapped on the door and moved across the hallway at the low ready and waited to see what the threat was. And the man came to the door. And I'd announced myself. I'd announced that I had a firearm. So he came to the door and I didn't know. But when he did open that door, it was probably one of the largest men I've ever seen in my life. Shirtless, 375 pounds, 6'5" or 6'6", and just filled the entire door frame. And you know what, my main goal at that point was to assess what what the risk was from him, as well as who was in the room and what was happening to them. And I saw some women cowering in there, obviously in distress. The woman in the hallway had been hit. There was furniture and crashed things all over the room. And he screamed some gibberish and then slammed the door with such force it actually shook the entire hallway. And I immediately did a reassessment. First, I was alone. No hotel security was up there. There turns out there wasn't hotel security. The police
Did
were
you have
still
your
en
gun
route.
drawn?
I did. I did. I had it at the low ready. As a matter of fact, I never once pointed it at him because as soon as he opened the door and from my angle, I had the most protection, I realized his hands were empty. So my main threat at that point was him charging me. So after doing a quick assessment, I went back and realized I had no time to stall. I slapped again on the door and moved back across the hallway, and he opened it. And this time he addressed me. He told me, "You're going to have to shoot me, and I'm going to hurt these women." And he slammed the door and said the same thing to those women. And I had moved close enough, and at that point, I retreated to the elevator very quickly, as fast as I could, to see if the police were there. You know, there's a huge risk when you get involved as a citizen that you, as a helpful bystander, could be unfortunately the collateral damage in a police response. And I was no response, no hotel security. So I moved back to the door, and I knew I had to get that man outside the door. So I slapped once more on the door, and I moved across the hallway, sat at the low ready, and this time when he opened the door, he actually came out and he sort of lurched out of the door and made a turn to the right and my left, and it looked like he was going to walk out. And to me, that was the best resolution. We could close the door, lock those women in there safely, and let the police deal with this man. Unfortunately, in that brief moment, I made a tactical error. I didn't turn my weapon as I turned my head, and just that brief moment of turning my head was enough. And he acted faster than I could imagine. He picked me up by my neck, slammed me into the wall, and reached for my firearm. And he got his hand on it. So at that point, I knew I had no alternative. I discharged a round, and he had his hand on it. And at that point, twice my size. I mean, I'm 6'5", but I'm fully disabled, and my left side essentially doesn't work. And this man was on me, and I went to cover the trigger. He started wrestling with me, brought his other arm down from my neck, and we were fighting over the firearm. And I was just covering the trigger. And right when I was realizing I was going to lose, and just to give you some perspective, my wife was sitting in this hotel bathtub right at that moment. She'd heard the round go off, and for over a minute didn't hear a single sound to know whether her husband had been shot or whether this perpetrator had been shot. And so we sat there and we struggled, and I was losing, not because I'm less than, but just because the fact is that I needed the equalizer for a reason. The minute that man opened that door, I knew if he came at me, there was no chance I could stop him. And so right when I was going to give up the goat and go for tissue strikes and hope that I could somehow get him to loosen that firearm, you're praying for a police response, anything. We were twisting. He had the advantage because I couldn't shift on my left hip. And as we turned, I saw a blood stain on the wall, and I realized I had struck him. And the thing about this is that he didn't make a noise when I hit him. Obviously the result of drugs and other such things. So he then at that point, it was almost like my realization became his realization, and he sank to the ground, I field stripped the weapon, threw it out where I could.
Where did you hit him on his body?
The autopsy came back, and it when I shot him, it struck through his flank and went through and essentially severed every major organ or shredded every major organ in his body. I was told that if he had landed on an operating table, that there would be 1% chance, less than 1% chance that he might have survived if he'd landed on with a trauma team there. So I stripped the weapon. I was calling out for help. My wife opened the door and threw me some towels so I could render aid. He was of no more threat.
So
A
you
man
tried
did.
to save his life,
Of
actually.
course, of course. He was, I mean, Geneva Convention alone states that once a combatant is no longer able to continue to fight, that you need to render aid.
Sure.
Another man came out and he was able to capture the women. When I say capture, I mean to gather them up. They were trying to flee the hotel. And then the police showed up, and they announced themselves with a rifle to your back, and you have to sit there and put in handcuffs because they're trying to assess the situation, and they were very restrained. I was very proud of that. But they did point a weapon in my wife's face. They did put her in handcuffs, and we sat down the hallway with our heads down as this man bled out, and we had no idea that he died yet. But then sat in a squad car for hours until the police were able to piece together our statements and match them up with 911 calls and the statements of the other victims, and it came out. And of course, the grand jury cleared this 3 weeks ago that this was what they call a clean shoot. It's a traumatic, horrible incident, and I wish it had never happened. But morally and by law, it was a justified shooting. And but then, our lawyer found out even more information as he started to dig in about this.
And the part that is the most shocking is who this individual was, what this individual did, and what he was planning on doing. So go further into a little bit more detail about who this perpetrator actually was.
So we're still under our investigation right now, and there's a number of factors here that are very confusing to us. The Hotel Indigo had removed its security cameras by choice just a couple of years ago. They had
Now, this is
voluntarily.
in Waco, Texas, this
It
happened.
is, it is, and it's a small town. You know that country song, things, not in a small town. Well, we're a small town, and it's happening. And what we had happen was uh, uh, we're finding out that the women were trafficked up from Houston. That
Wow.
that this is not even the first of dozens of incidents that have happened at that hotel of the same type, whether it be sexual trafficking, rape, shootings, even. And of course, these things aren't on the Yelp review when you're looking for a hotel, right? And they've done a very good job of hiding this. And there are a number of things that are red flags that we've noticed. And as we continue to investigate this and seek discovery on this, we're realizing there's a lot more to this. It isn't, you could draw the line that connects this from our small town to large cities to the border, to where women are being forced to serve sexual slavery in order to pay for their trip across the border. And these are direct connections that we're seeing. And of course, we're taking time off this year. I'm not going to run for Congress this cycle, so my wife and I can have some time to heal from this. We're in therapy to deal with this. Is obviously very traumatic for my wife. I mean, even me, but especially my wife, who has no experience with anything like this. But our number one thing that we want to focus on this year is developing a 501c3 that where we can sit here and point out to people all the warning signs, the symptoms that you would not think to look for to make you realize that you have the opportunity in your small town. And it doesn't involve having to shoot someone. It's just knowing the signs and being able to be aware and report what you see so that we can hopefully save the lives of women who right now are being exploited all across this country, even right now as you and I are speaking.
Yeah, I mean, it's an unbelievable story. And so this person who bled out that you shot in self-defense turns out to be the head of a international child trafficking ring. Is that
I,
accurate? Is that correct?
that's not correct. I wouldn't use the word child trafficking. That's again, our investigators are still researching all of this. What we
Uh-huh.
can say is that there is a connection there between a trafficking ring. There's no question about that. And we do know, based on the nationalities of the victims, that it is definitely an international one. That said, what part he played and what other parts people played, That's for the investigators to continue to find out. And as we get more details, we'll share those. But it's definitely a lot bigger story than just one man going out and trying to save three women, which
Right.
thankfully I was able to do. It's about the larger story of this sex trafficking and how it's actually permeated all of these areas, rural areas that you wouldn't think to look for that type of crime, if you know
Yeah.
what I mean.
Well, you know what's interesting is that Sound of Freedom came out. It broke all kinds of records. It really kind of put, the stamp on this major issue and problem, and it put it out there in front of people to see. And millions of people now know that the biggest and the worst child traffickers and women traffickers are Joe Biden. Joe Biden and this illegitimate regime for leaving the borders wide open. They're allowing child trafficking. They're allowing these women to be trafficked. It's really, really sick. I mean, to me, I think it's treason, if you want to know, personally. But this is an amazing story. You're a brave person. You're a brave patriot. You put your life on the line to save these women. So God bless you for doing that. Is there a book in the future and or a movie, and have you been approached by anyone?
I actually just yesterday was approached about the opportunity to turn this into a book, and as I told them, anything I can do to raise awareness of this. As you just pointed out, the resident in chief has done a great job of putting out the welcome mat for cartels, and we know that their favorite thing is to run women and money. And one of the things that I think is lost in a lot of this are the 100,000 children that went missing across the border over the last 2 years. Um, Most women who end up in prostitution are where they started their victimization when they were young, when they were children. So they're groomed for this. They're groomed to be complacent. They're groomed to be weak. They're groomed to think of this as their normal in their life. So even if it weren't to point to one particular that it's they're moving children, it doesn't matter. In the end, it's the result of years of systemic abuse that these women have suffered.
Yeah. Yeah, I've interviewed quite a few people that help rescue children and women. Craig Sawman Sawyer comes to mind immediately.
Absolutely.
Great guy, great patriot, lives in Tucson, dedicated his life to helping save women and children as well. God bless you, man. I really, not only thank you for your service to our country, but thank you for the service as a good Samaritan, trying to help these people when, it's a difficult decision to decide to get involved into, a private matter where you hear something, and a lot of people don't have that type of bravery. So I just wanted to say that you obviously have that type of bravery, and thank God you didn't get injured, right? You didn't really get injured as far as, shot or grazed or anything like that during the altercation, correct?
No, I wasn't shot, but unfortunately, it was the final blow for my hip and required me to now have to have a hip replacement at the age of 44. But, that's a small price to pay for the safety and lives of three women.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. So the last thing I wanted to just say is you have a prepper business, and if I'm not mistaken, the website is known as holycows.com. So
Whole
this
cows,
is what's
whole
that?
cows, whole
Whole
cows, as in
cows,
the whole cow.
wholecows.com. So people can actually buy meat and things like that they're trying to take away from us, right?
Absolutely.
And you can buy full amounts of the cow, basically. Is that
Yeah,
how that works?
we're shifting the paradigm. When I retired, I got together with my brother, another 100% combat disabled vet. We come from civil affairs, which we solve complex problems with simple solutions. And I don't want to survive on taco flavored beef porridge. I
Right.
would like to thrive. So we
Yeah.
shifted the paradigm. We're cutting up the whole cow, the sirloin, the tri-tip, the picanha, the brisket, and we're making the fillet, the ribeye, and what we're doing is we're sous videing it, pasteurizing it, and then freeze drying it, and it's hand carved beef that is good for 25 years. And I
Wow.
appreciate you bringing it up, but our idea is that we don't want people to survive; we want them to sort of thrive. And with everything coming down the pipeline, beef doesn't grow in a petri dish; it grows in a pasture, and I want to be able to
Exactly.
guarantee that. And we want people to be able to trust our company. We've worked very hard at that. Trust is not something that's asked for, it's earned. And my number one thing has always been the safety and caring for Americans. I don't know how much more I can exemplify that in my life, but It is in our company, and it is what we're doing, and we're trying to protect the food chain as long as possible.
Fantastic. The guest is Jason Nelson. Is that it? Jason
Jason
Nelson
Nelson,
and
at Real Jason Nelson on Twitter.
Jason Nelson on Twitter. And of course, the website is wholecows.com. Jason, it's an incredible story. I do hope that you end up with a book or a movie or something like that, because I think more people need to hear this incredible story. And of course, the story of your incredible life and dedication to your country and service. So God bless you for everything that you're doing, and continued good success.
And God bless you for everything that you do, Josh. We appreciate you.
Thank you. God bless.